Morning all, Richard Vobes here, 10th of July 2022, the Vobe Show and my daily ChinWag. Well, it's going to be as daily as I can, because it's not going to be daily all the time. There will be days when I'm not here or I've got other things to do, but it's principally daily. So if you miss out, don't panic. If you don't hear from me for a week, then send the boys in. There might be a corpse somewhere. No. I'm only joking. Thank you very much for your comments on yesterday's video, and let's just have a quick look at some of those just briefly. By the way, let me just say, YouTube have added an extra level of strictness on the comments, which means it tries to get rid of some of the awful spam. In my other channel, The Bald Explorer, I seem to suffer with a lot of these bots that try to get you off to some explicit dating agencies, and they keep shoving things in. But luckily, YouTube scan them out before they actually get posted. Others get deleted by mistake. Sometimes, and this is a weird thing, as somebody who creates YouTube, you go into an area of comments, which isn't the area that the users who just write them below the video. This is like a special place in the studio, they call it, where all the comments are filtered in, and you see on the right hand side the video that the comment relates to, and you can answer it. It's kind of I don't know what you would call it. It's like it's just different to how the user uses it, and then sometimes they get, as I say, they taken in for approval, and you go in, and sometimes I've found I've pressed approve, and then for some reason there's a blip in YouTube, and it goes, the message comes up, yes, it's been removed, and you go, no, I pressed approve, and then you can't go back. There's not an undo. So sometimes if your comments disappear completely and you think, hello, that was a bit unfair, sometimes it's that, and I don't mean to do it. And I've noticed in the approval area for this one, I haven't had a chance to look at them, but there's quite a few in there. Sometimes there's another anomaly, that's the word. There's another anomaly in which YouTube's, again, another blip comes up. I don't know whether other YouTube creators have the same thing. You go into the moderated comments for approval, and suddenly there's millions of them, and you think, hang on a minute, I've read these, they've been approved, why have they been put here? So it can be very confusing. Susie Davis says, I've got a wild garden as well, Richard. I never made it to India, but I have a photo of one of the neighbouring cats emerging from the undergrowth. It looks like a scene from the Jungle Book. Yeah, that's because I was talking about my wild garden. Not quite sure what to do about the wild garden. I'm not really much of a gardener. I would be if my garden was perhaps a little bit bigger than just outside the front of the house by, what is it, about 8 foot by 4 foot. Yeah, it's about the size of one of those sheets of plywood that you can buy from a do-it-yourself shop, and that's it. And you try to look after it, but the amount of rubbish that gets thrown in there from passers-by, because I'm on a relatively busy main road, and the amount of dog walkers that decide to let their dogs foul inside my garden, which is very irritating. Thank you very much. I'd rather they didn't do that. It's annoying, and you're so busy doing other things. And of course, you see your garden every day, don't you? You get used to it until eventually you're looking at it and somebody comes round. And it's like when people come round your house, you're so used to how the house is and you're quite content with it. Then somebody comes round that hasn't been in your house before, and you go, oh, blimey, actually you start noticing all the cobwebs, don't you? And the tins that are out of date, or the socks that have been lying underneath the sink for a long time. You think, oh yeah, maybe I should just quickly skirt round, and you start to apologise and go, oh, I'm sorry about the state of the house, I just haven't had a chance to clean up, knowing full well that you cleaned up only the other day. Does that happen to you? It happens to me rather a lot. And of course I'm filming in my house quite a bit, so people see what my house looks like. And then they come in and they go, oh, smaller than I imagined. It looks bigger on the telly, does it? Yeah, don't play my videos on the telly then. Play them on a phone. It'll look much more in the right dimensions. Anyway, thank you very much, Susie Davis, for that comment. Very nice. Terry Banton says, is the ChinWag ing the dog? I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Politicians, he says, are the only bad thing in the country. The rest is generally okay. Well, it's very nice to have that favourable outlook for the rest of the country, isn't it? So you don't mind being burgled, I imagine, and not having the police turn up. I don't know. I think it would be quite nice if you're burgled. Just that reassurance, even though that 52-inch colour television Is that big these days? 52 inch sounds actually quite small. Normally it's like 272 inch, isn't it? People, I think, just get bigger and bigger tellies. The bigger the telly, the more prestige there is. You know, if you're going to watch your big football match in the weekend, you want wall-to-wall television, don't you? It's like your own personal cinema. It's a bizarre thing, but let's not get into that. I could never do monologues by the way that you do. Did you learn your ability at Forest Community School for Boys? No, actually not. It's interesting you say that, really, because the thing that I found the best way is you've got to just practice every single day. I do something called the Naked Englishman podcast. I've been doing that since 2006. And I don't know that I'm a particularly good orator, but I do my best. And the thing about it is and of course I did the Vogue show, this version of this as a podcast, really mad. And the thing I like about this is the fact that you don't cut, you don't edit, you don't muck about. So there is a bit of pressure, and you've just got to keep going. And when things go wrong, because I think when you start recording yourself and doing things like this, I think that actually, because life is very easy and you could just switch it off or cut out the bits. You know, you watch a lot of YouTube videos and they've cut out the ums and the and the thinkings, and it's all very, very punchy. And I find that irritating. I like to see the person think. Obviously, I don't want to see somebody who's sitting there going, well, I think that the thing that we should do, of course, is what we should do is we should make sure all the tanks are aimed. The tanks, the tanks with the long gun. What is it called? A gun. Yeah, it is a gun. The gun turret facing the enemy, and when the guy with the red flag goes like this, with the red flag in his hand, that's when they fire. Obviously, you don't want someone mumbling and stuttering and all of that. You do want somebody who can try and coherently put the things together. But I don't mind watching somebody actually go through the thought process, because I think it's more genuine. But you may disagree, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on all of that. Let's do a couple more and we'll move on. And I'm just reading these at random. By the way, I have not read these beforehand. Sometimes I like that risk of doing it as if it's live. That's my thing, really. Just my 2 cents, says Anne L. She says, but since Julia has always been the lovely Julia, how about the bold and the Julia? It's bald. It's bald. Not bold. I never say I'm bold. Boldly go where no man has gone before. Yes, it could be the bald and the lovely. That's quite nice. I quite like that. Somebody else suggested the bald and the beautiful, which is nice. And the bald, of course, the bald and the purple. I think what's nice about the bald and the purple is both relate to our heads and our faces, I suppose, and our faces, well, our heads, yes. And my head is bald and Julia's head is purple. So in a way, whereas when you say somebody is lovely, you're putting somebody else might not think they're lovely. I never think that I daren't say I was lovely, because people may go, well, you're not. You're pig ugly. And that may be true. It's all in the eye of the beholder, is it not? Yes, it is. Thanks very much for that. That's very kind of you. Yeah, and you don't have to agree. You don't have to write that in the comments. Actually, Richard, you're quite right. You are pig ugly. That's. Thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. It's very nice. Anthony Conti is suggesting for Parliament for the next person for the Prime Minister. As I said, who do you reckon? Give me somebody who's interested in this country. Enoch Powell. He's dead. He's long gone. Controversial figure for reasons which I won't go into. But he is, as you know. If you don't know who he is, check him out. Interesting bloke, though, actually. For all that, Andrew Bradbury says, yes, this is interesting. He says, times have changed, and us English feel very weakened nowadays. There is a new wave arriving. Quite frightening, really. And I do agree with that sentiment. It's that thing about, I've lived in this country for over 50 years, which is half a century. Can you imagine it? Half a century in here. And the weird thing is, this is what I think younger people who perhaps are a bit more with it and a bit more now than older people, is they haven't been around as long. Now, you know, older people have only got that's pretty much that solid ground that they can have over a 20-year-old is, if you're 50 something, you can say, I'm older than you and I've been around here longer. And that might be absolutely meaningless in any other sense of the word, but it does mean that you have got a perception of the world. Of course, then they turn around and say, yeah, but you're just an old dinosaur. But, you know, that length of time is something that you can't take away. And what am I rambling to? What I'm trying to say is sometimes that length of time has value because you can see what has changed. And I always think about my father or my mother. My father died at about 84. It was either 83 or 84. Died of dementia, and the last 2 years of his life was terrible. However, that's not the issue here. It's the fact that he was 84, and in those 84 years, he lived through the 20th century, born in the 1930s, died in 2000, whenever it was, 17, something like that. And he had seen so much change in his life and the pace of that change, where his father and his grandfather and his father before him would not have seen anything like that change. He saw the advent of wireless, he saw the advent of commercial holidays for people, he would have seen the advent of television, of black and white television, of colour television, of communication. He would have seen the beginnings. And he didn't really get into the digital age, because he was getting a bit too old. It was too fast. It was just too fast for him. He didn't really understand the internet. He didn't want a computer when that came. He started his own business. Here's a funny fact for you. He started his own business whenever it was in the 70s. He didn't have a telephone. Didn't have one of these, mobile phones that we have today. Of course, nobody had back then. But he didn't even have an office. And he was working out of a bedroom, effectively, because my mum and dad had split up. But he was running his business. And at 5 o'clock in the evening, he would park up next to a public telephone box, one of these K6 red telephone boxes. And that was the phone number he had given his clients. I mean, terribly enterprising. And so he would, about 5, and he would say to his clients, look, I'm out of the office, I'm in the lab, we don't have a telephone there, and we're developing he made aerials for a living, all sorts of different aerials for boats, marine stuff, for the Secret Service. He made stuff for aeroplanes, all sorts of weird and wonderful things. He was an aerial designer. And he would tell his clients, he said, look, I'm in the laboratory, we don't have the phone in there, and blah, blah, blah. So I'd be back in the office at 5 o'clock. And he would sit outside this telephone box for about an hour and wait to see if anyone rang. And that's how he conducted his business until he got to a point where he was able to afford a telephone and actually take on some premises and blah, blah, blah. So, he saw change. And I think that younger people don't actually always appreciate that older people have seen change and the rate of change. And to go back to Andrew Bradbury's point, yes, the rate of change is quite frightening as things have changed, and it's very quick. And I don't know that it's particularly for this country that I live in and I love and all the rest of it, that the change of how all sorts of elements of change, all sorts, I'm not going to pin it down to anything in this particular video because we're running out of time, but all sorts of change are happening, and sometimes it's quite frightening, and I agree with that. And we don't know where we're going to go. So we don't know what we're going to get with the new Prime Minister or what's going to happen with the government, or whether we could get rid of that government altogether and have somebody who's a bit more... I would want somebody more traditional and somebody who's actually invested in this, as I said before. But anyway, that's that. You're welcome to carry on with the comments, and if you're lucky, I'll read them out in the next episode of this. The other thing I wanted to briefly touch on before I've got to go is, do you ever feel left behind? Do you feel everybody else is more successful than you? I had a wobble this week in the other YouTube channel where I was thinking, my goodness, I can't get stuff done. I don't know where I'm going. What should I do? Nothing is taking off. Then a friend of mine pointed out that one of my videos, in which I just made some very basic comments about a television program of a year ago, had done just under 70,000 views, which was very nice. Thank you very much. He said, bung some adverts in it in case it carries on. I thought, oh yeah, I better do that. But very often, you know, you compare yourself with other people of a similar age or a similar lifestyle to you, and they're doing very well, thank you very much, and you feel left behind, and you feel a bit rotten about yourself. My question to you today is, how do you pull yourself up? How do you, if you see that other people seem to be succeeding and you feel a bit left behind, what do you do to get yourself out of that funk? Be interested to know. Bung your comments down below, and I will catch up with you very soon. Take care. Thanks very much for watching. I will be back, no doubt, at some juncture. Might disappear tomorrow. Can't promise. Maybe a later one tomorrow. So we'll see. But anyway, thanks for watching. See you next time.